What's up, guys? Reggie, and I was actually just thinking, are niche fragrances actually worth the high price? Is it actually worth paying that much money for them? When some of them are like 200 or all the way down like 600 bucks. But yeah, like always, this is a very subjective topic, and like always, this is with my most honest opinion, like always. So yeah, there are some really good, things that you get from buying them, and of course, also not so type of good things, of also owning them. So we will go over the kind of like positive, um, you know, reasons of having one. And number one is having the high quality fragrance, um, with like really good refined ingredients. Um, so what makes a niche fragrance stand out from like the dupes and the designer brands is the fact that they feel more exclusive. They feel more private, um, and of course it has you know most of them do end up having more quality, right? But like I said, that's kind of like a one of the main reasons why just people end up buying them. So the next thing is the unique creative type of sense. And don't get me wrong, like there are so many crazy good and kind of crazy weird as well. Um, niche fragrance scents that you can honestly smell for so long and just be like, well, what even is this? But yeah, most of them you do tend to be pretty okay for some for some people that are interested in them, and some others are a bit more complex. But yeah, and then like another thing is like people kind of just tend to buy them because of owning the status, of the giving themselves the luxury of actually owning a good, high end, you know, niche brand, right? And that's where like a lot of people it kind of like it it basically becomes like a big deal because they don't care about having some dupes. They don't care about having maybe even some designers because they say, well, the niche brands are like at the tippity top of the fragrance type of pyramid, I guess, when in terms of like status and exclusivity, I guess you want to call it. And like some other people like just collect them. Um, they just buy them to just kind of collect them and have them. Some like exclusive, like limited edition versions of like a certain fragrance. And I know that there are, of course, niche brands that are just like this that kind of have the same function as some other, designer brands. For example, there are niche brands that sell fragrances for roughly almost like 200, and there's some that are like kind of like in the middle, which is like 300 ish. And then there's of course like those really high, expensive ones, that are even above 500, like Baccarat Rouge. That that's a really expensive one. But yeah, that's kind of like some really positive things that you know it kind of it's like the turning point, like the biggest reasons for someone to actually commit and buy the actual fragrances. But yeah, and I know that this isn't like every single thing, but these are like in my opinion like one of the most important aspects of why people just decide to buy them. And now going over the why they're not really worth it in my opinion. One, because the high price tag. Um, for some people, they're okay spending their whole paycheck, um, 600, 500, bucks maybe. Um, but yeah, like I said, that's kind of a lot of money to just kind of spend on a bottle, right? And just with like some scented water, man. Like, and it's true, and I don't blame people who don't want to buy, fragrances that are even like 180. I don't blame them, because at the end of the day, you know, having a bottle like this, and having all the juice, it probably costs the whole company like a good $25 to make everything. And they get like, I don't even know how much, probably like 300% of how much. But and that's just a designer, right? So now imagine a niche brand that is um, like selling their fragrance bottle for over 300, right? So that gives you a really good amount of knowledge to kind of, keep in mind, should I really buy this one or should I not? And then now it leads to the dupe brand factor, cloning fragrances, and of course selling those clones for a lot cheaper, man. For some people, they don't really care. They say, well, you know what, it's not worth it. I have seen comments like in under my videos, and just like over on the community, I have seen just people say, yes, bravo to them. It's a really expensive and exclusive type of like fragrance brand, but it's not worth that much money. It's not worth that much money. I'm not gonna spend that much money on a fragrance where like it literally costs the company like around, like I said, 25, maybe even 30, $40, unless it's like a super high end, like exclusive, like 100 only were made, right? But yeah, and then another thing is blind buying them. Ah, man, like already blind buying a fragrance and not knowing what you're gonna get, and going based on of like some super unauthentic reviews on them, kind of also puts you in kind of like a bad position, because you end up just listening to them and you end up buying it, and then you don't even know what kind of scent you are into personally. So you end up buying a fragrance that's like probably your opposite, and you end up hating it. And then you have that moment of realization, like, damn, like I just spent like almost half of my paycheck, or maybe even more than your paycheck, right? So that's another thing. And it kind of like also leads with prestige brand hype. You see, you might even search up like niche fragrance brands, and most likely you're gonna get at the top like Creed, PDM, Nishane. You're gonna get Zerjaf, and like so many others. You're gonna get, um, and it's like crazy, because you see that and you're like, okay, this is the best. But what a lot of people don't know, that just like designer fragrances, there are like those at the top of the chain, like Dior, Chanel, JPG, right? And there's also like some really good, designer brands that have a lot of really good and somewhat affordable, fragrances. And it works just the same way for dupe fragrances, for my bad, for niche fragrances. Those are like really, super mainstream, and there are also those, you know niche brands that are not so well known, and they sell a lot of quality. One of them that I can think of right now at the top of my head is Vcanto. They're actually pretty good. And that's just like one little example, but there's just so many, um, like other niche brands that you can explore, and they're way more affordable, um, than all those mainstream ones. That's another really bad thing, is how popular they are, the mainstream. But yeah, and then the compliment, fact. The compliment fact that you buy a fragrance thinking because it's high quality, because it's $400 that you spray it, that you're gonna get compliments. You end up not getting a single compliment, and then you start kind of regretting buying it. Why did I listen to those guys with over 300,000 subs or followers? Did they lie to me? Or what happened? And then they kind of starts messing up with their insecurities and stuff like that. But that's kind of like another topic. But yeah, like I said, people just kind of start. Um, well, I'm not saying everybody does it, but like a pretty good amount of people expect a fragrance to just basically be the their turning point for people around them to whenever they get a whiff of what they smell like, to just go crazy and just bombard them with all kinds of crazy reactions. But like I mentioned, that only pretty much happens in the commercials that the brands release, and yeah, those made up stories by those like bigger creators. And I'm not saying like it doesn't happen; it does happen, but the chances for that to happen, yeah, you pretty sure you have an idea.
Yeah, they're not your typical mass appeal type of, fragrances like most, designer fragrances. But yeah, I'm not saying that they're impossible to pretty much like, but they do require a bit more of a complex type of, sophisticated type of sense of smell, you know. But yeah, overall, in my honest opinion, like always, do I think it's, worth buying them? Most of them are not. Most of them are not. Um, but like I mentioned, there are those really good, not well known, niche brands that produce a lot of really good fragrances. And of course, with the pretty much a very affordable, even kind of high end, designer fragrances type of, price tag. But yeah, like always, guys, it's been Reggie. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Like always, I love reading you guys' comments and I love engaging with you guys, like always. And agree or disagree, I will, respect every single opinion and every single thought. And like always, guys, peace.